We always begin with an acknowledgement and honouring of our First Nations people and land. So I'll do that, and then we play music and have our readings. You know, the purpose of the readings from different faiths is to help to nourish and cultivate our spirit. But firstly, we acknowledge and pay respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of this nation and the various countries which are within this nation, and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of all of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So just a little bit of Zoom etiquette. If you're not speaking, if you could keep yourself on mute, please, so that we can minimise background noise. And just to remember, our primary purpose is to learn and to develop more oneness and understanding between us. And through doing that together on a Thursday night, that we can keep that going throughout the week. Having that same approach to life, to learning and to valuing what other people are bringing into our life. So Siva will play the music now. Is that right, Siva?
You are muted.
We can't hear.
Sufficeth all things, above all things, see God. 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 Sufficeth all things, above all things.
So we will do our readings now.
I'm waiting for the writings.
Yes.
Can you see the right?
Yes, we can see. Thank you. Glorified art thou, O Lord my God. Every man of insight confesseth thine sovereignty and thy dominion, and every discerning eye perceiveth the greatness of thy majesty and the compelling power of thy might. The winds of death are powerless to hold back them that enjoy near access to thee from setting their face towards the horizon of thy glory, and the tempest of trial must fail to draw away and hinder such as are wholly devoted to thy will from approaching thy court. Methinks the lamp of thy love is burning in their hearts, and the light of thy tenderness is lit within their breasts. Adversities are incapable of estranging from thy cause, and the vicissitudes of fortune can never cause them to stray from thy pleasure. I beseech thee, O my God, by them and by the sigh which their hearts utter in the separation from thee, and to keep them safe from the mischief of thine adversaries, and to nourish their souls with what thou hast ordained for thy loved ones, on whom shall come no fear, and who shall not be put to grief. Baha'u'llah. Be ye a refuge too fearful. Be ye rest and peace to be disturbed. Make ye a provision for the destitute. Be ye a treasury of riches for the poor. Be a healing medicine for those who suffer pain. Be ye doctor and nurse to the ailing. Promote ye friendship and honor and consolation and devotion to God in this world of non-existence. Abdul Baha from the selection from the writings of Abdul Baha.
These are the earth's license life, thrilling to the elements, bringing thee heat and cold, sorrows and joys, this brief and mutable, bear with it. The soul which is not moved, the soul that with a strong and constant calm takes sorrow and takes joy indifferently, lives in the life undying. Hinduism, Krishna, from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2.
Birth is suffering, decay is suffering, death is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Not to get what one desires is suffering. In short, the 5 groups of existence are suffering. And what, in brief, are the 5 groups of existence? They are corporeality, feeling, perception, mental, formations, and consciousness. Eightfold Path of Buddha. Driven by fear, men take to many a refuge. In mountains, forests, parks, sacred groves, and shrines, but these are not a secure kind of refuge. By taking to this sort of refuge, one is not released from suffering. He who has gone to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha for refuge, though, this is a secure refuge. This is the ultimate refuge. By taking to this refuge, one is indeed released from all suffering. Buddhism, the Dhammapada.
We will surely prove you by afflicting you in some measure with fear and hunger and decrease of wealth and loss of lives and scarcity of fruits. Those who patiently persevere will truly receive a reward without measure. On no soul do we place a burden greater than it can bear. The Quran.
The Proverbs of Solomon, a wise son mocked a glad father, but a foolish son is the grief of his mother. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivered from death. The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish, but he thrusts away the desire of the wicked. He becomes poor that dealt with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent marked rich. A wise son gathered in summer, but a son that doth shamefully sleep in harvest. Blessings are upon the head of the righteous, but the mouth of the wicked concealed violence. The memory of the righteous shall be for a blessing, but the name of the wicked shall not. The wise in heart will receive commandments, but a parting fool shall fall. Judaism, Kesuvim, Michel, Proverbs.
For this is thankworthy. If a man for conscience towards God endure grief, suffering worthfully, for what glory is this, if when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently. But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for there is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men shall revive you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely. For my sake, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. Though our outward man perish, yet the inward man is renewed day by day. Christianity.
O Son of Man, for everything there is a sign. The sign of love is fortitude under my decree and patience under my trials. O Son of Man, if adversity befall thee not in my path, how canst thou walk in the ways of them that are content with my pleasure? If trials afflict thee not in thy longing to meet me, how wilt thou attain the light in thy love for my beauty? Ahlullah, Arabic hidden words.
Sorrow not if in these days and on this earthly plane things contrary to your wishes have been ordained and manifested by God for days of blissful joy, of heavenly delight, are assuredly in store for you. Worlds holy and spiritually glorious will be unveiled to your eyes. You are destined by Him in this world and hereafter to partake of the benefits, to share in their joys, and to obtain a portion of their sustaining grace. To each and every one of them you will no doubt attain. To each and every one of them you will no doubt attain. To each and every one of them you will no doubt attain. To each and every one of them you will no doubt attain.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to this Thursday Interfaith night. We're very privileged this evening to have Dr. Thava Seelan talking to us about the global pandemic and social determinants of health. Dr. Seelan is originally from Sri Lanka and has a MBBS and other postgraduate qualifications from Australia. He runs Bridgeview Medical Practice in Western Sydney in partnership with his wife and another doctor, and with a multi-background and multidisciplinary team. Dr. Seelan has contributed to articles in international medical journals and presented in clinical conferences. His passion is to improve the health outcomes for struggling members of society, and has seen him establish a local diabetes education program with community volunteers, and work abroad with emergency relief programs in Sri Lanka, where he grew up. Dr. Seelan believes that the whole person, the family, the community, and whole societal approach is the fundamental ecological health model of primary care, and was awarded an OAM in 2020 for his outstanding service to medicine and to professional colleges. So, without further ado, Dr. Thama, we're all ears. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Can I share the screen? Yes, can. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my slides. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to talk about global pandemic and social determinants of health, what we can do about this one. Because, I mean, we have seen in the last 1.5 years, more than 1.5 years, this pandemic has actually really affected the whole the globe and every country, and every one of us actually affected in some way. Why this actually affecting people differently? So that's what we're going to talk about. So there are actually, health is not distributed equally, unfortunately. That's everywhere in the world, whether it's a progress country or third world country, everywhere actually you see the same pattern. So there's a global economic forces, like the fundamental causes actually include global economic forces, macro socio-political environment, political priorities and decisions, societal values to equity and fairness. So this is at the community level, you have that the societal values to equity and fairness. Then it actually leads to wider environmental influences. When there's a distribution of unequal distribution of income, power and wealth, poverty, marginalization and discrimination, that lead to economic and work, like physical, learning, services, social and culture, all are not distributed equally. And individual level, you get actually unemployment and impaired social and interpersonal factors affecting their health as well. So inequalities in well-being, health, life expectancy, morbidity, mortality, all are affected by these inequities of health. There are two terms I would like to describe: inequity versus inequality. The inequity means unjust differences in health between persons of different social groups. It's a normative concept in the sense, actually, if two different types of people from different background, ethnic background, may have actually some chronic diseases, they affected more in one group than the other. So this is one example of inequity. I'm sorry, actually, I mean inequality. But inequity means that it's a man-made. It's actually you treat two different groups in a different way. That is an inequity. I'll come to this in health inequalities. The definition is difference in health status between population groups. So it can be actually socioeconomic status or deprivation. Example, unemployment, low income, poor housing, poor education. And the other protected characteristics like age, sex, race, sexual orientation, and disability. And then vulnerable groups in the society, like marginalized people in the society, like example, refugees. And geography. If certain areas actually they are isolated, so that actually they don't get the health outcome that others get from other areas. Then I would like to talk about health inequities. This is the most striking phenomenon in the whole world, actually, which actually affects a lot of people who it can be prevented if there's a good policy making and if you take it to the level of fairness and social justice. So unfair and avoidable inequalities that are not inevitable or natural, but the product of human behavior. So what are the root causes? These are the root causes: racism, sexism, classism, that is actually social status, heterosexism, and ableism. Ableism means actually, I mean, you discriminate disabled people or people with actually psychological any psychosocial conditions. So what are the social determinants of health? Race or ethnicity, occupation, income and socioeconomic status, social isolation, education, food security, and housing status. So this is in a graphic way I'm describing the social determinants of health, actually. So childhood experience, sometimes, I mean, you know, when they have a very difficult childhood, that actually affects them as an adult. Housing, education, social support, family income, employment, or communities, access to health services. So these are the health determinants that can affect someone's health at large. This is a good picture in explaining equality and equity. When you say equality is the first picture, you can see actually three different people actually with different heights, but they are getting the same treatment. That means actually that the three standing boxes actually they are getting it, but still the first person is having a good view, the third person still can't get the view. But when you talk about equity, the first person doesn't need that help, but the third person may need actually two standing boxes, so that he can view. Then all three can view. So that is the equity that is determined by the social and the political determinants. So what inequalities that causes COVID-19 susceptibilities? So when you look at that, actually socioeconomic and development and life course can actually affect these things actually. So socioeconomic, when you look at that, actually, as I already mentioned, you know, the area of deprivation and healthy food, green space, gym and parks to health services for pollution. So I mean, these people are more vulnerable to get COVID-19 infection and get affected badly. Employment, transport, health, food services, housing, all these actually are vulnerable people who can get severe COVID-19 infection. On the other hand, if they are affected by other diseases like hypertension, overweight, obesity, cardiovascular disease, or type 2 diabetes, and behavioral aspects of smoking, drinking, or drug abuse, or stress, all these things can actually affect them because they become a vulnerable community as well in getting the COVID vaccine affected severely. So when you look at the social justice and COVID, the vulnerable group actually health inequalities or inequities. So an example is Black Americans are 3.5 times more likely to die of COVID-19 than white Americans. Why is it happening? The simple explanation is actually the Black Americans are more likely to have chronic diseases than white Americans. But that is not true. Actually, they have a segregation system there. The Black Americans go to different hospitals and the white Americans go to different hospitals. So that actually that hospital health outcome of those hospitals are not very good. That is why actually they are more likely to die than that simple reason of actually they have chronic diseases. The second thing is digital divide and access to the internet. When that the pandemic actually spread the whole world, a lot of people actually staying at home and school children studying from home, and a lot of adults actually they are working from home as well. But there's a divide as well. For example, in India, 50% of people don't have actually access to internet. That means 600 million people actually don't have access to internet. Jobs in a virtual world. Lower skilled workers are more prone to actually job losses and reduction in hours because they can't actually work from home. So the COVID has created more divide between these communities. The other aspect is as access to healthcare and service delivery. There's always an unequal distribution of COVID-19 testing. If you see different parts of the world, some parts of the world actually you had to pay for COVID-19 testing. Some people can't afford it, and they are living very far away from the testing center, so they can't get it tested actually. So then unequal access to healthcare. And if they are affected by COVID, actually they cannot access to healthcare. Is it because their social status, or they cannot afford, or they are isolated from the main centers? And the other thing is social protection justice system. Social protections during lockdown, when they lose jobs actually in progress countries, they have actually social support system in place, but third world countries they don't have. But even in progress countries, some people actually don't have access to that actually. Example, people don't have actually proper visa actually, like asylum seekers, and they may not get the access to the social support system. Unfairness is access to COVID-19 vaccine could leave world facing immunity gap. It's happening all over the world, and some parts of the world actually that the way actually vaccine rolled out, not everyone can access to the vaccine, and it's affecting the whole process of prevention in getting out of this pandemic. So we don't want a system like this, unequal system. We need to create an equal system, equity to everyone. What these are the questions you all should answer. What social, economic, or environmental conditions affect your whole community? Is it at the moment it's COVID related? I think it's a lot of things actually affecting the whole community. What condition differentially affect subgroups in your community? Every community, when you look at that, actually there are a subgroup. They are the vulnerable people, or they don't have access to medical health care. So these are the people affected more. Why are these conditions experienced differentially for subgroups in your community? So again, actually, I think we all should ask these questions. It's not actually what we are experiencing what other people are experiencing in the community, that we should be able to, ask these questions so that we can get answers. In Australian society, there's a substantial gap between the rich and the poor. So we need a health equity framework to develop equity community, equity healthcare in the community. So what key actions we need to propose? It has drive a fairer share of income, power, and wealth through policy, legislation, regulation, and taxation. Ensure fair and equitable access to good quality housing, education, health, and other public services. Ensure all public services are planned and delivered in proportion to need. This I am just actually reminding you that the same picture there. So it's that the delivery is in proportion to their need. It's not actually equal distribution to everyone. So that's the way actually we can actually create a equitable society. So what have we learned from this pandemic? With a fast-moving pandemic, no one is safe unless everyone is safe. So that actually people start thinking about it. In the history of this world, actually, when at least our time, actually, we didn't have a situation like this. Any diseases, actually, it is confined to a certain group of people or certain country or certain areas. But this actually affected the whole world. So everybody understand now, actually, no one is safe unless everyone is safe. So that actually, and also that unprecedented economic impact in every country, every part of the world. So what we have learned is actually we need to include everyone in our policy decisions, equitable care. So those two key points have to be, remembered by everyone, from the policymakers to the community to everyone in the community as well. WHO has actually developed a program called ACT. That's actually access to COVID-19 tools. So that means actually everybody equitably get access to COVID-19 test treatments and vaccines. COVAX is part of ACT, which actually developed vaccine fair and equitable access for every country in the world. However, in every country of the world, every part of the country, actually, I think that equitable access still not actually happening, even though it's as a policy WHO adopts. So what can be done? This brief identifies inequalities around the COVID-19 pandemic in exposure, vulnerabilities, and coping capacity. It suggests that crisis responses in 4 areas could turn the tide on inequality. These include expanding system for the universal provision of quality social services, identifying and empowering vulnerable groups, investing in jobs and livelihoods, and acting through the multilateral system to respond to disparities across countries. So the approach towards equity, equality, and social justice. Sorry, I can't see that. So institutional level, which includes how organizations and governments set their laws, policies, and practices. So the government and the policymakers at that level, they have to actually have laws, policies, and practices to equitable healthcare to everyone. And interpersonal level, or I would say in a community level, which includes how people behave towards each other, and an internal level, which includes how people view themselves. So everybody should have the feeling that they have the right to, access to healthcare, equitable access to healthcare. So the human rights is we are all in this together. So we should come together in combating this global pandemic in an equitable way and in a fair and a social justice way. I think that's all from me.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you mind stopping sharing your screen so that we can have the gallery of everyone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the wonderful PowerPoint on the presentation you have. I just wanted to say that all this injustice and inequality was all along in the world for many years, but it was really in the hidden pocket, or is very in silence. And only this COVID has really brought it to the eyes of everyone in front, that we can really see and feel it. So even though we are suffering from the COVID, but perhaps we can get some kind of a good outcome out of it, that we can resolve this problem of.
Yeah, I think that it has, taught us a lesson. This when the problem actually exists in a certain population, the rest of the world doesn't normally pay much attention. But this is, everybody's paying attention. So the inequities and inequalities of healthcare, I think, should be addressed to combat a pandemic like this.
It's very true. Even within Australia, the vaccine hesitancy sometimes is connected to previous trauma and difficulty to trust the health service.
That's true.
And, and even the way the police or the army is used to distribute information or to distribute vaccines has actually created more resistance and problem for people, rather than if the message had gone out, we are in this together, and who are the vulnerable, who have the needs, how can we support them? That message should have been going out first.
Yeah, I think, sorry. Yeah, I think that the policymakers and the government, actually, they are realizing that they are now reaching out to the community, and they are involved in community partnership in dealing with this COVID issues. That's the only way they can actually reach out to this vulnerable group.
If anyone has a question, if you look down the bottom, there's a reaction button, and you can raise your hand if you would like to make a comment or ask a question. It's the easiest way to make sure that you're seen if you want to ask a question or say something. Okay, Natagan, would you like to speak?
Yes, I am in a healthcare system, and before COVID, it was a flu.
The petals of the flower have got a certain.
Sorry, it was a flu injection, like 2019. It was just a flu injection, and as a nurse, that when I go to work, they ask you if you want to have a flu injection, and it was up to you to get that or not, and nobody would force you to have the flu injection. But when the pandemic of coronavirus started, it seems more political and seems more, like a tyranny, and it's look like they push you to something against your desire. I just want to know your idea about that, because I am in healthcare system, and I know most of the doctors, has to have it because otherwise they can't go to the work. And my GP told me, I haven't had it and I don't want you to have it, and you wait for a while to see what is the outcome of it. And you see in Melbourne that in, whatever they are doing, it's somehow is like a projection to the whole world that we are like, the time of Hitler, really. And this sort of thing, if you talk about it, is not good. If you don't talk about it, you never have enough information to make a decision for your own health. I just want to know how much politics is involved. And I know that pandemic is real, but I don't know if the vaccine is the answer. Would you please tell me?
The vaccine, actually, they have developed within a short period of time, but they have actually tested in different phases, and they have completed the phase 3 trial, and also they have actually rolled out to real patients. Actually, all over the world, actually, millions of vaccine have been actually administered, and you can see the difference of what it has actually caused. And a lot of countries actually initially severe cases and deaths were in the high numbers, and which has reduced dramatically in countries where they have actually vaccinated good number of that basically reaching the highest number of vaccines in those areas. That is what exactly we are trying to do it in Australia as well. I mean, from the I'm not talking any particular vaccine here, but I think in general, any vaccine actually will be effective in preventing the infection between 80 to 95%. Some of the vaccines actually we are using in Australia, it's almost 100% effective in preventing severe diseases and deaths. So vaccine is the answer, definitely, but it's not the only answer, because you have to still likely continue with the public health measures in preventing diseases, because you can still get the infection. As I said, actually the infection is not 100% it's going to prevent. So you can carry the infection, you may not be affected, but you can carry and give it to someone else. So you need to continue with the social isolation and the sanitation and all those things you need to continue to practice as well. We are more worried about not the individual level, actually whether you're vaccinated or not, actually, but community level. I think if you want to protect your community, I think vaccination, at least we need to reach actually at least 80%. Even though actually we are going to get freedom after 70% of vaccination, but 80% of vaccination of the population, we are pretty much safe in the sense actually at least we can save a lot of lives in Australia. So that's one point. And you talked about influenza vaccine. When you don't take, it may be your choice, because we don't take influenza, it may affect the individual person. It may not affect the whole society, but when this one, the difference is actually this whole world is locked down actually. So we need to come out of this the pandemic. So the number of vaccines because influenza every year you give the vaccine and it protects that individual person, but here you are giving the whole world and reach that the critical level, then you can protect the whole community, the whole country, the whole world. So I think we are all part of it. We have that. It's our prime duty to protect the whole the community. So I think it's our responsibility to take up the vaccine. That's my view.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yung, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you. I just try to make it brief. I have 3 questions. First of all, we talk about something for the future. I heard on a TV program, National Press Club, yesterday, And our government, Australian government, was thinking about, talk about post-pandemic, a bit fast to talk about post-pandemic COVID-19 and the global trade. And in the future, we're gonna, because with a trade, that was one of the ways that we uniting people, unity, like a main theme of the Baha'i principle. So the unity and uniting people together and keeping the peace in Indo-Pacific. So that's a new politic, like planning. And the second, that we're going to be trading with other European nations and the Indian people, the Indonesia people, the Japan people from Japan. So I mean, like a very pink, happy, beautiful picture that waiting for all of us. And I'm just wonder, what do you think about the law in the religion about restriction and lockdown, that versus the how we try to unify people? So that's one question. The second question.
Let him answer the first question.
Yeah, the army people in the
Jung,
Can you allow him to answer the first question, please?
Dr. Thava, do you understand the question?
No, can you repeat that question actually, because you're talking about other political thing? Yeah. So what's that question? You are exact question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just repeat the first question briefly so that we can understand.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The question is, because I just want to tie our talk, I just want to relate our talk into the Baha'i faith. And in the Baha'i faith, one of the main principles is to have unity among people. The second idea is about having peace, harmony with people. So talk about our future. Yeah, we just think about the post pandemic of COVID-19. In the future, talk about international trade, what you call economic free trade agreement that Australia at the moment is planning for the future. So they talking about why we need trade, the global trade, to be uniting people together so people can talk to each other, and then keeping the peace in Indo-Pacific area and Europe, obviously. So we just can't get locked down all the time, and we can't just, get restriction all the time, because then people will be very sad. So what I'm saying is, how you're gonna tie your COVID-19 issue with the religion, with the Baha'i religion? I mean, you rescue people.
That's a very hard question, Jung.
You rescue people, but I mean, you rescue them physically. You keep them alive. That's beautiful. I mean, at least they're alive first. But how are you going to help them in a spiritual way? I mean, according to your high status, just like imagine you're a great angel, how are you going to give the spirit up?
I don't know what I don't know how to answer this question.
Okay.
It's beyond my knowledge actually.
Yes. I think Jung, neither Dr. Thava Seelan nor Jung are Baha'is. So you don't have to bring the Baha'i faith into this question. The question I think she is asking, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jung, how the way that governments are trying to do deal with other governments for their own benefit.
While the lockdown is.
How is it going to bring unity among people? Is that right?
Well, I think it's a very beautiful concept. But if we talk about reality, you know, just go through social media, the TV, they said in India, there's a lot of people died of COVID. In Indonesia, there's a lot of people died of COVID.
Yes.
And
But it's connected in, Jung, by the thing that, you know, Dr. Thava was talking about the inequity between how resources are allocated. So how we trade and how we as a nation should be thinking, rather than buying submarines, that we should be actually spending money on the health of the people, not only our own people, but getting vaccines out into other countries that don't have them available. From this COVID time, we actually should be thinking about, well, why are in some countries people dying so much?
Yeah,
what could we do? What could we do?
That's what I was worried. That's what I was worried, because it's not only about COVID or trade, it's all about, like you say, nuclear submarines. We haven't finished on one issue, and now we step on the second or further issue of, you know, building nuclear power submarines when people are dying of COVID, and probably because the building submarine will create employment, and that's a good thing, because then people will have jobs and, you know, economy booming. But then nuclear power can relate to cancer and internal bleeding of the body and everything. So now we have COVID tied together with cancer and nuclear radiation, for example. So we just like piled up all the issue and we're not solving it. And talk about equity and equality. I think the Australian government tried to help the nations that need help. That's why we want to have global trade with them to improve their employment aspect and economic and finance stimulus.
I think, you know, probably
Can I just say something as well?
Just one second, let Dr. Thava finish his sentence, and can you put your hand up, please?
Yeah, I don't want to elaborate because I mean it's like a political part I can't answer, but what I'm saying is actually at the moment we are very optimistic. So it's actually we are talking about roadmap to freedom. So hopefully, I mean we reach that target of vaccination rate, and at that time actually that the infection rate will reduce and the deaths will reduce, and then probably I mean we are planning out about the you know, the aspiration, political aspiration or the aspiration of economic aspirations. So that's what actually the government is trying to do, but I can't go in depth of what they are planning. Yes, sorry.
Okay, thank you. And can we just have Ahmed ask his question because he's had his hand up for a long time.
Yeah, thanks very much. So my question is, I'm just wondering what is your thoughts or opinions regarding suggestion that this COVID disease is a God-made event, that like, for example, when we read in Bible that at the time of Pharaohs, for example, lotuses came, drought came, and the first born in the family killed by disease, and things like that. And perhaps this is not my suggestion, but perhaps a suggestion that this disease is God-made, especially that it doesn't affect the younger ones and it affects the older ones that have lived a long time on the earth. These sort of things. What's your opinion or thoughts about this concept?
I think there's always a power above us actually, and we always, you know, have to face challenges. I mean, throughout our history. So this is the biggest challenge, actually, I think, after a long time. And if you look back, actually, 100 years ago, the people have actually faced Spanish flu. During that time, actually, the estimate of between 20 and 50 million people have died. And it's a big proportion to the world population at that time. And now, actually, I mean, we have more means of actually controlling the disease. So hopefully, I mean, we should be able to control. But of course, I mean, there is always a power above us that actually controlling things, actually, which actually we can't explain.
Thank you. Siva, would you like to ask your question?
What about me?
After Siva.
I was before him.
Oh, it's just in my, I'm sorry. It's just the way it comes up on my screen that Siva was ahead of you.
Yeah.
Okay, you can ask your question. And also, Jung had 2 questions. He only finished with 1.
I just thought I'd spread it out a bit and then come back to Jung.
But what I wanted to say is that Dr. Thava Seelan actually, in his presentation, he asked for the discussion, he asked a few questions that we should focus on.
Yeah.
And he said that about the health inequities, he said, what social, economic, or environmental conditions affect your community? What conditions differentially affect subgroups in your community? Why are these conditions experienced differentially for subgroups in your community? So he pointed a few questions for us to focus on. Well, we are all welcome to ask any question related to the talk and for the well-being of humanity. So I just thought that we will remind ourselves, because in our neighborhood, in our country, we can see there are differences in health outcomes, especially if you take the indigenous people here in Australia. So this inequity is very, very high. And I don't know whether we can, as an individual, change the policy, but I can influence, or I can take an effort to change. So, but we have to, as an individual, what we should be doing. So I was just thinking that maybe we can focus on those questions, but you're welcome to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Siva. 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there any way that we can see your face?
Sorry, my camera is not working.
And your name?
Is Fatone.
Would you like to ask your question, please?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to respond to Young's question and also perhaps part of the Siva question that for inequality, what we can do. I guess that this problem of injustice and inequality, and also as Young explained that now we have this pandemic and we are going to submarine and all, these are all, to me, is because we are not having the basis of our system or decision making or policies on the basis of unity of mankind. And that is what the Baha'i faith is promoting. If we promote the unity of mankind, therefore the policies we make, we don't make only in the benefit and interest of Australia, that we just go for the submarine. We think about the whole world and we look at the health of the whole world. And that's why we bring that equality or equity in the level that is useful for the whole world. And that is how we can kind of put together, as Young said, how the Baha'i faith matches with this situation. So Baha'i Faith is trying to say that we should put the basis of our all policies and all decision making and all on the equality of mankind. If you are from Africa or from Japan or from Australia, you should have a basic kind of living or health, education. So that's how we can bring the unity and kind of balance between everybody's life. Sorry for.
Thank you. Do you want to say, respond to that, Dr. Thava?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point you have raised. Actually, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the inequality actually of the healthcare. When I say healthcare, it's the health is affected more in certain group of people, and the healthcare delivery also may vary from person to person. So then we talk about the inequity as well. For example, in New South Wales, COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted the low-income areas in Sydney's west and southwest, home for the city's most linguistically and culturally diverse communities. So, I mean, if you don't recognize that there is an issue in certain communities, and you can't actually resolve those issues. So I think government is in the right path, and they are recognizing and each community how they can tackle this problem, and how they can actually form a community partnership. Actually, that is how actually they are trying to resolve this issue. But it's not easy. It's a very complex issue. So I think through unity and equitable healthcare system, we can actually achieve this, but it may take some time.
Thank you. Sora, would you like to ask your question? Then I'll come back to you, Yung.
Just wanted to know whether the doctor knows how much help the World Health Organization has given to communities like in India or Africa. Are they really helping? And also, if you could just say a few words about the future. Is that the future of COVID going to be bright like soon, or is that going to take a long time? It's already like nearly going to be 2 years now.
Yeah, it's hard to predict actually. I mean, your first question is actually the distribution of vaccine. WHO has a policy of distributing vaccine everyone in the world actually. Then everyone should get it free. The rich countries are contributing to the poor countries vaccination, so they don't have to buy the vaccine. So this is what's happening at the moment. But distribution within the country, when you look at that, actually it's all very complex, because I mean the countries are large and people are scattered all over the place. So I mean people in the city, they get the vaccine first. And it's any country actually the same actually. So I mean, people in the peripheries, it's very difficult to access to the vaccine. So even people in the city, actually the distribution, the logistic is very complex. So, and there are people, because a lot of people are involved, and sometimes I mean things can go wrong as well. And I've heard some places actually the vaccines are being sold as well actually. So these are the things actually happening. So I mean, you need to actually, it's very difficult to oversee all these regulate the vaccine the distribution at that grassroots level is not easy. So hopefully, I mean, we'll all come together and resolve this issue in a country level and in areas, level of the community level. That's the first question. And your second one, what did you ask? Second one.
The future of COVID. Do you see?
Future of COVID. Sorry. So future of COVID is nobody can predict. No one can predict actually, but the possible things can happen is it can die off. Like I mean, Spanish flu after 3 years actually, it's like that time there's no vaccine, there's no treatment. They didn't even know what it was, whether it was a virus or bacteria, they didn't know. But after 3 years, it died down. Okay, so I mean, if the nature takes that path, maybe it's well and good. And the second option is actually, I mean, the virus can continue to, change its structure, so that actually maybe every year we may have to take vaccines, like a influenza vaccine. And the third one is time to time we are going to have it's going to be a prolonged period. We hope not. And in that case, actually, time to time there'll be the second wave, third wave, fourth wave, and it will continue like that. So these are the three possible outcome of this pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jung, would you like to ask your second question? You have to unmute.
Right from the beginning of COVID start to go trouble, I accidentally went into some documents that produced by the American Defense Force, and they talk about, they detect where the COVID come from, the virus and everything. And then one of the first place they look into is sewage and water to find COVID items in there. But then at the same time, the TV program every day is talking about China, Wuhan, and they think that the COVID come from China and Wuhan with all the problem, and some other source of TV also talk about COVID virus or bacteria was produced from the lab. So my question is, too many sources of information that we read and didn't tell us exactly where the COVID come from. And obviously, we can interpret that COVID have many types. It can bear many names. It can divide. It can be called like, my name, Jung, for example, any names. And during a time of uncertainty of finding the sources where the COVID virus come from, why the vaccine were produced in many different countries and different labs. So whatever vaccine people have in at the moment, whether it's going to be like last long effect or it's going to be causing trouble later on in life, we don't know. Next generation, or the baby born, or the new baby is going to be born, and we don't really know, because at the moment people, like you say, I heard a lot through the grapevines that people got reluctant, people scared of, people fear of vaccine. So because they don't know what the future going to hold for the younger generations, the younger babies coming in about, like 2 or 3 years time. So that's one question.
Okay, so that we'll just leave it at that, please, Jung, because we've got to share the time.
Can I ask what the question is? Are you asking what is the origin, or what is the effect of long-term effects of the vaccine? What is your question?
My question is, we just had to get the core main ideas that many sources talk about where the virus of COVID come from.
Yes, so the question you're asking, what is the source of the virus?
Yeah, since last year when they first started it, some said it's from China. The American people look into it. The European people look into it.
Okay, let Dr. answer that question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not very sure about your first question. It originated. I mean, a lot of medical journals say it originated from Wuhan, but I really don't know, because I mean, still they are investigating on that actually. So, and we don't know the initial statement is it's actually originated from an animal. That also is not confirmed yet. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a right answer for that actually.
And the second part of the question is,
Yes, sorry.
vaccine has been produced all over the place.
Yeah.
Whether it
Yeah.
has any long-term side effects.
Any vaccine, actually, when you look at their history, I mean, initially there are a lot of resistance. People actually, they are scared of taking the vaccine. And in one good example, I'll tell you, in polio vaccine, when it introduced early 1960s, people didn't want to take a vaccine. And then actually they tried very hard to influence people to take vaccine. Then people started, because I mean, it affected a lot of people. Like they become, paralyzed. One side actually, paralyzed, and then they cannot walk and become, disabled. So then what happened is actually they started taking vaccine. Today we are almost actually eradicated polio. So that's a success story. So now we need to actually look at you just actually risk analysis. Look at that actually. What if the vaccine, we know now, what we know about vaccine is actually it saves life. It saves lives. Definitely it saves lives. And it actually reduces the hospital admission, reduces the severe diseases. So that is why, and millions of people have already taken a vaccine all over the world, and it showed actually results. Of course, I mean, you are saying, what's a long-term effect? Theoretically, it is not possible that it will have they are using an mRNA vaccine, and which actually causes it stimulates the body to create their own antibodies, so that the vaccine itself is not going to stay in the system forever. So it's very unlikely to cause actually long-term effect. So I think we need to go with the flow. What's happening now, how we can prevent this, how can we end this pandemic. So in that sense, I think I strongly advise that we need to go for vaccine.
Thank you. Anna, would you like to ask your question? You have to unmute.
Yeah, mine is more, sorry, it's more of a way of, more of an observation than a question. Pardon me. What I find is that what COVID has brought to light is that the important factor of inequity, or this great disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And it seems to be in all countries across the globe, whether it's a developed country or a developing country, the people who are well off seem to be able to protect themselves against COVID much better than those who are marginalized, the poor. In the US, I understand that 1% of the people, the wealth, 1% of the people hold something like 30% of the wealth, and the lowest 50%. Similarly to of Australia, even India, a developing country, where the top 10% have 77% of the wealth, and the bottom 50% just 1%. So given this situation, it's not surprising that COVID is the people who are poor, the people who are marginalized, are unable to protect themselves as well as those who are at the top. And what action is being taken by the governments, by the international community to counter this situation? Yeah, it's an observation, and I think I'm following it up with the question: what are we doing about it internationally? What are the international agencies doing? What are the governments doing to make sure that these inequities, that we get over this inequity and get some kind of equitable distribution of the vaccine across the society?
Yeah, I think in the health point of view, I mean, WHO has actually, there's a policy of equitable distribution of vaccine across the world. No doubt about it. But when it goes to the particular country, it's up to them how they are distributing. So I mean, it's I'm sorry. So it's sometimes, I mean, it's a very complex, especially highly populated countries like India, distribution is a nightmare. So, and with other issues like the politics and community
You need to
level.
get some water?
So yeah.
I think Anna has infected the doctor.
Yeah.
It's just a throat. So I don't know what each country is taking action. Actually, I can only talk about Australia. I think Australia is taking every step to distribute equally to the population. But in other countries, it's of course about a questionable thing. So I suppose it's not easy to implement something that actually they can distribute in an equitable way. But your question about the haves and have-nots, actually, it's a long-term issue. So I think it's policymakers, they have to do something about equal money distribution or equity in their social status and things like that. I don't know how they can actually tackle that problem, because that is the, as you rightly pointed out, that is the I think that root cause of all these inequitable health, health inequities as well. So I suppose actually in a long-term basis, we need to look at that, how we can have a policy of distributing not only healthcare, other welfare as well to the whole community. And it's not just one country. I think across the world, it's there. Actually, even progress country and then third world country, all the countries actually you have these haves and have-nots. Actually, this is a major issue.
Thank you. Rianya, would you like to unmute yourself? And
yeah, Labha, I have a question. Which vaccine is used in Australia? First question. And second is, what is opinion, doctor's opinion, which is the best one among these all vaccines, which we know now?
Okay, it's more of a technical question. So yeah, I think we've been actually vaccinating with AstraZeneca and then Pfizer, and recently from last week, Moderna vaccine also come into the distribution. When you look at the efficacy point of view, actually all three are equally effective. And all three are nearly 100% actually effective against the severe disease, hospital admission, and deaths. But the efficacy of preventing infection it vary from vaccine to vaccine. Actually, it's between 70 to 95%. AstraZeneca being I think 75 to 80%, and Pfizer is about 80 to 85%. Moderna also similar actually. But the efficacy can vary from the situation where you are vaccinating as well. Like sometimes, I mean, when you vaccinate in a place where hotspots that make a lot of infections going on, the efficacy may not be the maximum. But sometimes when people are infected, actually they have actually a natural immunity as well. So when you're looking at actually the efficacy, we are looking at the herd immunity as well. The herd immunity in the sense actually when we reach a certain level of vaccinated population, then you develop a herd immunity. The herd immunity comes naturally as well. So in an area where a lot of infection going on, like for example in Sydney, so we will reach the herd immunity a bit less than the actual the target. Actually, now actually they are actually saying that 80% is the target, but we are going to get freedom after 70% because there's natural immunity as well in the community. So that's why actually, I mean, in the target actually is a bit less than the what actually they are expecting to expected in the international public health requirement. The other thing you said, which is the best, which I cannot answer that question because I can't be biased in that. AstraZeneca efficacy, when you look at that, actually there is a very rare case chance of getting a blood clot in AstraZeneca, which is about 2 to 3% per 100,000. But the deaths, when you look at the deaths, actually it's only 1 to 2% per million. So that is why actually AstraZeneca has a very bad publicity, and a lot of people is reluctant to get AstraZeneca. However, it's a good vaccine, and a lot of people have taken it, and in a lot of countries, actually they have. In UK, AstraZeneca was the main vaccination that they actually delivered, and it's working very well. And Pfizer is. Pfizer also has actually rare complication like myocarditis, that is actually inflammation of the heart muscles or the covering of heart, actually pericarditis. But death from myocarditis is even rare. 1 in 2 million may have actually adverse fatality. And Moderna is similar to Pfizer. It's both are mRNA vaccine. So, I mean, that has got the similar effect as Pfizer vaccine. So, at the moment in Australia, I think from 12 years to 59 years old, anyone can have Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. And AstraZeneca is, so far, it's actually only for people over 60 years, actually it's recommended.
Thank you. Robert, would you like to ask your question?
Just a couple of comments about the polio being eradicated. People I know, they had polio when they were younger.
Yes.
And they've now got total muscle weakness, and doctors thought it had been eradicated, and they've had to set up special clinics to cope with these people who've got the, you call it dieback or whatever you want to call it, of the polio. Even though they had polio when they're younger, they're now going to wear calipers again, and we'll end up in wheelchairs, etc. Now, the other comment I want to make is doctors prescribing medication. The other day, I went to the doctor with a very sore throat, and I've been suffering sore throats off and on for months, even before COVID. And so the first thing what the doctor did, COVID test. I've since learned that the medication I was on causes sore throats. So how many people are having COVID tests because of their medication? Yeah, so you got a sore throat, you got to get a COVID test.
I think we are in a very difficult situation there. I mean, everybody, because I mean, a lot of people are affected by COVID infection. So anyone comes with the slightest symptoms, you get the COVID test done.
Tracy, can I mention something in here?
Yes, okay.
Yeah, the thing is that the virus itself causes a lot more problems than the vaccine. If you get COVID, you have long-term respiratory problems. Your lungs would be damaged. Your lymphatic system will be damaged. So there are many things that the viruses do, and the vaccine protects you from these things, like flu. The flu itself causes destruction of the lung, whereas the vaccine will prevent that. So overall, you have to look at the benefits rather than being fearful of what it could happen. If you go in the street, the chance of be hit by a car is more than the possibility of getting complications from AstraZeneca, for example. So everything should be balanced before, getting fearful of things.
Before,
Well said, Ahmed.
sorry. Yes, you can answer, Doctor.
No, I mean, it is not a question. He just actually made a statement. I said, well said.
Yes,
exactly.
I just wanted to read some of the comments that were there. We actually overlooked. I think Shantini Seelan said sometime back, there is genuine mental anguish regarding vaccines. This is a responsibility of law-abiding citizens. And then also Shantini said, no one is safe until everyone is safe. I think a doctor also mentioned in his talk, there is an urgent need to look after the whole world. So, and Nisha, she's also a doctor, I think. All vaccines are equally efficacious. Please take whichever that is available in your area. Thank you. Tracy, you can now.
Siva, the other Siva, would you like to ask your question?
No, this is what I wanted to say.
No, there's the other Siva's got his hand up too.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment. This is the first time an individual has a very great role to play. An individual has a role to play in the eradication of the COVID-19. You have to get vaccinated, follow the hygiene, whatnot. And when an individual plays that role, the villages play the role, countries play the role, and we all are working towards world eradication of COVID-19. My comment is, it is at this time of the history, an individual has to play his role well. Thank you.
Very true. It's our chance to show that we're responsible citizens, thinking about our fellow. You know, I got vaccinated because I had a friend say, could you please get vaccinated so that I can, you know, we can spend time together.
Thank you.
Zora, would you have another comment or question?
I think if Sachi wants to say his question first, and then I will say, because I asked already a question before.
Okay. Sachi?
I want to thank the doctor for that nice speech. He was very short and sweet, and everything was useful for us. But actually, I don't have a question. I only have a little bit of comment. Of course, some of you know that I'm a nature's person. This COVID is a nature's problem. The nature says, first thing for life, we have to survive. So that is the, and you need to take appropriate action for that survival. So here, when COVID is here like this, very detrimental and very fatal, we have to see something for us to prevent our, I will say, death. Because if you don't survive, there's no point of thinking about unity, that and this. And you are not, very soon, the whole global population can be eradicated if we are not taking this serious. Unfortunately, the medical world has developed so well by genetic engineering. They were able to get the vaccine so quickly. If it is about, say, 10 years or 5 years back, the vaccine would have taken about 5 years to come. Within that, many would have perished. So we should be now thankful to the medical field or the science and take whatever they give. This is a medical issue, not a political issue. So we have to listen to the medical people. They know better than the politician or any economist. What economy if we are dead? See how many people have gone in a short while. and most of them in the front line, helping us to survive. So think of them. So what we have to do is what is available first. We have to take it. AstraZeneca, me and my wife took the first time, I think in April or something like that. March, I have taken both doses. I have other problems also, a little bit of asthma and things like that. Still, that is the first thing they gave. So we took it. That is how we have to tackle the nature. Say if there is a storm or something coming, we have to immediately move out. There's no point staying here and saying, what's the government doing? What is it? First, survive. So I will advise people, without any political or any other economical issues, take something to keep yourself alive. If you are dead, there's no point talking about economy or that and this. So in fact, by the way, I can also tell, I was a vet before. We were fully on disease prevention and vaccinations. Vaccine is the first available, especially for viral. We don't have any antiviral drugs yet. And that can be used also, that's so strong, we can't use antiviral at the moment. So vaccine is the next one. So we are supposed to take the vaccine and survive. Then we will sit and talk about peace and unity, equal distribution and all. And also here in nature, selfishness have to come first. Why I want to love you? Because I want you to love me. Actually, that is the real principle behind. We simply say you must love everyone. You can't do that. You have to love someone so that you are loved and you are safe, you are in peace. So it is more selfish. So when we look after ourselves, the whole global things will be looked after. And I also want to say that there were about 5 global extinctions in the past. About 90% of the life was eradicated and they came after that. So let us not give a chance for that. Now we are well advanced. Luckily, we have got these vaccines. And according to the doctors or the medical people, it is political people are advised by medical people. That we should understand. It's not whether we want to keep the economy or something like that. The doctors are advising, take this. So that's what I would like to just give a comment as. The nature is playing. So I believe in nature and I think that is ultimate. So nature says, you look after yourself, survive. So that's all I can say. I hope we will do something good for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachi.
Thanks, Dr. Thank you, Dr.
Sora, you want to ask your question now?
I was just going to say that about the question that doctor asked, that what is our responsibility towards our community, is that, the doctors and medical, they can say, go and do your vaccination, but also they should educate them about how they look after themselves. And looking after yourself is not only vaccination, is everything. I mean, at the moment, vaccination is first, but to just keep you healthy is a lot, to be educated. People are not educated about what they eat, how they react, how they keep their mental health. Is a lot, to health rather than just one aspect which everybody is concentrating. I know the urgency is the vaccination, but the main thing also to keep healthy is a lot to do, and lots of them it could be done through community. One is trained to tell people the way they cook, the way they eat, the way they communicate with each other. All that's what I thought. one of the questions that doctor asked.
Yeah, true. Actually, I mean, I think it's a holistic approach. Actually, it's not just one aspect of health. Actually, we need to practice everything. The holistic approach in the sense actually the health. A healthy person. To make them healthy in every aspect. The food and the exercise and prevention of chronic diseases, prevention of infections, everything actually is part of the whole health aspect of that managing people. So I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you. We might go to John because he hasn't asked anything.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Tracy. I'm really grateful to Dr. Thava Seelan. He's my colleague in the community. He has done so much to the Tamil community, not only during this pandemic, but for a long time and in different ways. And also, I appreciate what he had done for asylum seekers, starting a group called Track to Feed. Actually, it was started that he and his team would look after the people with mental health problem, and it's a mentorship program. And now that particular program is now used to give hampers every Saturday to a couple of hundred people or more, and it's happening. So appreciate that, doctor. And my comment was that question was asked, what will happen post-pandemic period? Probably the history will be written in this way, time before pandemic and the time after pandemic, this particular pandemic. I think it's going to be different, and people can sort of say a lot about it, but the new normal would have brought us out of this struggle, out of this pandemic, as people who are going to think very hard about life, people, neighbors, religions, and whatever that divides us. And Doctor brought us this fact about inequality and inequity that will come out, and people are going to realize that, countries are going to realize that. It's very sad that at the moment we are more interested in submarines and things like that, but what exactly should happen is to think the way that Doctor has led us today. And I think everyone has to sort of do something about it, Thank you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, John. Okay, Jung, do you have a third question, or did you, so is it a short question, please, concise?
Yeah, very short.
Very short and concise. Clear question.
Just say, so what I'm asking, a lot of people during the exercise, they have a time, 1 hour, 2 hours, they rush to the sea, the ocean, because I think common belief said the ocean fresh air will kill all the germs and virus and bacteria. Is that true? Whether the ocean fresh air will kill the COVID-19 virus, then that will be an issue with the rich and the poor. Only the rich can stay near the sea and the ocean. But if we talk about the fishermen, they do a lot of fishing and they catch fishes. Will they be exempt from COVID, like they get sick because of the COVID at the sea, at the ocean?
Interesting.
The first question, I understood. The second one, you said that the ocean, he gets infected. Is it what is the exact question?
Oh, the French people, they believe that if you stay close to the sea, the ocean, then people can live longer. That's what they say. Like
Right.
be healthier. Healthy.
Okay. The first question is actually you said. Open air or open space, the virus is killed. I think probably to some extent it's true, but I think the explanation is actually when you are in the open air, the virus is spread out. Actually, I mean, it's not like a confined spaces, and the virus, if somebody actually breathes out, it comes to your face, and you breathe in, and then the virus actually. But in an open air, it's not like that actually. That because the wind is taking a lot of particles away from you. So the infection is much more less when you are actually meeting someone in the open air. So that answers your first question. Second question is, I don't know that whether these people live longer when they live close to the sea. Maybe I think in psychologically, I mean, they are feeling better, I suppose. Maybe a lot of other factors, but I can't pinpoint why that. I mean, they live longer.
Okay, thank you. Maybe vitamin D. Sunshine,
yeah.
vitamin D, cod liver oil.
Maybe a lot of factors.
Anyway, the last question goes to Ahmad.
Sorry, I don't have a question, but I have some personal observations that I'd like to mention, which is very similar to John. If you look at the emergence of COVID, it's like it has opened a Pandora box. It has socially affected every one of us in the world. Looking at it myself personally, I have been more conscious of attributes, social attributes, human attributes, like whether I'm jealous, whether I'm selfish, or things like that. And it has for us, for every one of us, has put questions to us. And I think that eventually would bring us into being a better society. So, hardship always causes a society to become better because of the hardship that has happened. So I think it would have a big impact on the human society. Like, for example, cleanliness. We know that in China, they were washing in the shopping center very badly. And even us, we know now how to clean ourselves daily and wash our hands properly. It has opened a big Pandora box of social aspects for humanity.
Yeah, true, Ahmed, but we had to learn this through this, like this way actually. So I mean, in a hard way, but I think, yeah, it's true that actually we learned a good lesson from this pandemic, everyone. And I think the social aspects is going to change. How they treat other people and everything.
Thank you. Okay, Nisha, the last comment or question to you, and then
yeah, thanks for that. Yes, sorry I had to leave because I'm working, but yeah, well, I'm not going to ask any question only because if I start asking, then we could have another session altogether. So I think I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Seelan for sharing his views about the views on health, equality, and equity. I think I've listened to quite a few of the comments from the participants as well. I think if there's just one thing that I wanted to say is that, I think this pandemic, is obviously something that has happened in an unprecedented times, and the virus in itself has actually taught us a lot of things in terms of, the healthcare globally, health access globally, the effect on humanity, and how we can actually learn from this virus to build a better nation globally as well. I mean, putting aside all the political, associations, be it, management of the virus, the origin of the virus, access to vaccination, whether to take the vaccine and stuff like that. I think we just need to be socially responsible individuals to do the right thing. We have to act in the interest of everyone, not just, we need to shift from the I, me, myself to we, they, us. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from this COVID pandemic. Maybe that could be the future topic to dwell on, i.e. the lessons that we've learned from this pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tisha.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Seelan, for all of your information and awakening, to the inequalities in the world and how that affects how we're dealing with health. And we appreciate that, and we appreciate your work that you're doing in Western Sydney, not only for your patients, but for other people, and your heart for refugees and for humanity. So we give our thanks and respect to you. And thank you everyone for participating and being respectful and cooperative. And we'll see you next week. Unless Siva has something to say.
Yeah, I really want to thank Dr. Seelan. I actually caught him almost at the beginning of the year to give a talk, and he said yes, but he was so busy with many things. Serving humanity is his passion. So finally he accepted to give this talk. So I really appreciate. And also I want to acknowledge his wife, also Dr. Shanti Seelan. You want to say hello, Shanti, and also his partner, I think.
Yes.
Dr. Titus.
Yes.
Also there. And the last one who gave the comment, Nisha, is also a doctor. Medical doctor. This is there, Lumina. Hello, and where's Shanti?
Yeah, I'm just a baby. I just deliver babies. I have no idea about anything else.
So thank you everyone, and God bless you all, and we will see you all next week.
Thank you everyone for your patience.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you,
giving me the
Dr. Thank
opportunity.
you, Siva.
Thank you.
I asked Titus, you have somebody, Dr. Titus.